Some figures do not walk under street lamps. The light reaches for them and loses its courage. A city learns their outlines by absence, and music knows their names before mouths will speak them. Follow a melody long enough, and you will find its author, the shadow that wrote it first. Title: Crimson Sonata, Episode 4, The Conductor's Shadow. Adele wakes before the bells, sitting upright, with her hand already closing around the violin case, as if the night had been one long rehearsal for this movement. The page she received in the von Richter garden lies on her desk. Crimson ink arcs across it in a hand that keeps changing its mind, as though someone were writing from the other side of glass, and the glass remembered older sentences. She does not play it. She reads it the way one reads a letter that will bite if sounded. Downstairs, Madame Roussel measures coffee with the precision of a surgeon who has learned which doses save and which do not. "You should burn that page," she says, without looking up. "If I burn it, will the ash stop singing?" Adele asks. Madame almost smiles. "No, but at least the song will have to work harder to be heard." Adele folds the paper. "They say he wrote these measures. They say many things about him." Madame sets down the spoon. "That he was once a chapel organist who found a chord that would not release him. That he conducts for an audience no one else can see. That he keeps time with a metronome made from a widow's wedding ring. Pick the story you can fight." "I will pick the story that gives me his throat," Adele says. "Where would he go to listen to a city without its noise?" Madame considers, then nods toward the window. "Take the river north. There is an old chapel on a hill that used to keep watch over plagues. It is empty most days, except for people who are not. A fog like wet wool clings to the morning." Adele follows the river's patient curve until the city loosens its grip and stone gives way to ashed grass. The chapel sits where the hill has decided height is not a virtue but a duty. Its door is swollen, wood scarred by iron. She pushes and enters the chill. Dust keeps company with incense from a century ago. Pews stand like disciplined soldiers who have forgotten whom they serve. The altar is a pale rectangle of daylight that wandered in and cannot find its way out. Adele stands at the crossing and raises the violin. She does not mean to play his page. She intends a simple scale to test the room's temper. But the first note she makes is already the first note he wrote, the string choosing, the bow consenting, the air agreeing. The chapel receives the sound and makes of it a procession. Her second note bends in the way grief bends when you say a name aloud for the first time after burial. On the third, the floor remembers footsteps. A man watches from the apse where shadows keep their patronage. He is tall the way rumor is tall. No silver mask, no cloak. A dark coat, ordinary cloth made dangerous by the fact that it refuses attention. His hair is shot with white that is not age, but some other frost. He holds nothing in his hands, which is the most dangerous way to hold a baton. "You tune well to rooms that kept the dying," he says, as if greeting a student who finally found the right classroom. "Play the fourth bar again. You rushed forgiveness." Adele lowers the instrument. "Are you the conductor?" "I am a man who does not answer to other people's capitals," he says. "But I have conducted, and the name followed me home." "You were at my house," she says. "You cut the air and the fire obeyed." He studies her. His eyes are steady in the way of a clock that has never been wound. "A fire obeys the room that wants it," he says. "I did not make your house flammable. I named the tempo. If I had not, someone else would have someone with less affection for measure. What affection for measure burns a family? The kind that despises sloppiness, he says softly. The kind that thinks an unfinished score is a sign. Anger tightens her throat until the words have to choose whether they will fight their way out or die honorable deaths behind her teeth. She raises the violin. Then listen to my sin. She plays his page. The chapel leans closer. On the fifth measure, the roof beams speak in their wood language, a groan that is nearly praise. On the seventh, the altar's light flinches, as if the sun remembered something it should have left in the dark. He stands very still, which is another way of conducting. Adele hears two melodies, the one her hands make, and the one that runs beneath, older, like the river under the ice. The lower line is a name she almost knows. She follows it until it begins to follow her. The eighth bar asks for something she has not given before. She gives it. The note climbs, breaks, and returns as a low tone that sounds like footsteps descending a stair no one built. The chapel door opens. Cold walks in, wearing masks. 3 figures, each with porcelain faces that have never admitted anyone lived behind them. They carry no weapons, but move the way people do who have learned that their hands are sufficient. The conductor does not turn. The society would prefer you do not practice here, says the first figure. The voice is female, crisp as the edge of new glass. These walls are consecrated to keeping, not calling. They were consecrated to truth, he replies. And truth is always called, never kept. The girl belongs to us, says the second figure. We paid for her lessons, one way or another. Adele keeps playing. If she stops, she suspects the floor will remember how to give way. She watches the conductor's face for any flicker that might be fear. There is none, only a small interest, the way a botanist might regard a poisonous bloom. Beautiful, yes, but more importantly, useful. Belonging is a word for people who dislike verbs, he says. And she isn't, fortunately for you, very good at verbs. The third figure tilts a mask. Then you oppose us. I oppose bad hearing, he says, and faith when it mistakes itself for craft. Go tend your ledgers, they do not leave. The first steps forward. The next measure will unhouse this place, she says to Adele. Do you intend to kill the dead who still sleep here? Madame Roussel's little vial sits in Adele's pocket, like the remainder to a sum that ought to come out even. She keeps the bow drawing and reaches without looking, wetting her finger and flicking the liquid across the strings under the chin rest. The sound dulls by an inch, just enough to turn the eighth measure's hunger to a want that can be negotiated. The conductor glances at the violin with mild approval. Someone has taught you not to be eaten by your instrument, he says. That is rare in your age and rarer in any other. Why did you bring me here? Adele asks, letting the ninth bar settle into the chapel stones. To groom me to finish your sonata, to make me your hand. To see if you would finish it without being asked, he says. To test whether your appetite is yours or the page's. So far, a draw. I don't want your page. I want the truth. You think they are 2 different doors, he says. They are one. It is only that the hallway is long. A bell begins to ring somewhere in the city, a slow peal that counts nothing in particular, except the way hours travel when watched by grief. The masked figures withdraw as if called by an appointment that outranks hatred. The woman who spoke last pauses. We will not break on you, she warns, looking not at him but at Adele. but we will bend. And when we bend, you will be tempted to call it mercy. They are gone. The chapel loosens its shoulders. Adele lowers the bow. The last vibration fades the way a name fades from a mouth that never had permission to say it. I saw you in the opera, she says. I saw you at the river. Do you live in places where people think they are safe? Safety is a dialect of lying, he says. I live where the lie stops translating. Adele steps closer. It is one thing to hate a mask. It is another to hate a face. He has the look of a man who has practiced not using mirrors. The more she stares, the more she sees the absences, the smile that learned better, the softness that stopped practicing. Tell me who hired you, she says. Tell me the name that paid for fire. I do not take commissions, he says. I take confessionals. But names are easy. The one you think you want belongs to a patron who wanted a family removed. The way you remove an extra bar from a measure so the rhythm balances. He believed your father had become a threat to the way the city pretends to love music while selling it. That name will satisfy your anger for 10 minutes and then rot in your mouth. The name you actually need is the first this sonata ever had. What is it? He looks at her violin. Play the 10th bar. If you can hold its center without becoming wind, I will answer. She lifts the instrument. The 10th bar is a room without doors. She must become a window. The bow enters and the air changes temperature. She hears her mother's hands on a piano that is not here. She hears her brother's impatient heel tapping in a room that never had wood. She walks the measure as if carrying water in a bowl over a floor that would be insulted by a spill. When she reaches the end, her shoulder aches and her mouth tastes like copper. She does not fall. The conductor nods, not in praise, but in acknowledgement of a fact. Good, he says. Then you may know that the first name was sanctified holy faith. It was written by a monk who lost both and tried to rebuild them from sound. Every player who followed has renamed it to excuse their own theft. I called it Crimson Sonata because I was not yet honest enough to call it by my mother's name. He says the last line as if he did not mean to speak it. The chapel holds still. Your mother, Adele asks. She died in a room like this, he says. I tried to pull her across with a cord I had not earned. The music came. She did not. He does not move as the confession leaves him, as though motion would turn it into a story, and he has no appetite for narrative. Then why do you keep writing pages that hurt people? Adele asks, anger returning like a bird to a roof it understands. Because hurt is the only currency most ears can hear above the city, he says. Because if I keep the sonata close, perhaps it will stop walking the streets in other men's pockets. He looks at her. Because I have not yet found the player who can finish it and survive. And you think I might. I think you will try, whether I think or not. Adele stares at the altar's square of light. Dust dances in it the way children dance when they believe no one is watching. She imagines a world where her father stands at the threshold. Her mother tucks stray hair behind her ear. Her brother rolls his eyes and hands her a chocolate. She imagines the door between that world and this one opening on a hinge she could oil. She imagines the hinge asking for blood as its wage. What price did it ask you? She says. He does not answer quickly. It asked me to conduct without being seen, he says at last. It asked me to become a shape that makes other shapes move. It asked me to stop being a sun and start being an echo. And did you pay? Every day, he says lightly, which is another way of saying entirely. Adele closes the case. Then watch me refuse your currency. He smiles at last, small and almost kind. Refusals are my favorite movements, he says. They begin so clean. She leaves him in the chapel. Outside, the fog has thinned enough to admit the city again. Vienna stretches its streets like old fingers, joints cracking where history refuses balm. Adele walks with purpose that might be called anger from afar and called love up close. She does not go home, she goes to a printer. The shop smells of ink and hope disguised as commerce. She places the crimson page on the counter. Copy this, she tells the proprietor. In ordinary black, he spits. Some notes don't like to be handled, Fruitline. She waits while the press breathes. The copy emerges, inky and mortal. She takes both pages and lays them together. The crimson version shifts as if offended by the company, but the black one stays stubbornly still. She smiles. There is more than one way to turn a curse into a map. At home, Madame Roussel listens, without interrupting, as Adele recounts the chapel, the masked trio, the man without his mask. When she finishes, Madame sets down her knife and apple. He told you more than he has told any student I have known, she says. He must be near a truth he cannot lift by himself. He said the Sonata's first name was Holy Faith. Madame's mouth tightens. Then it began as a prayer and has been falling ever since. Help me raise it, Adele says. Madame wipes the blade. I will help you keep balance. I will not help you rewrite gravity. Then stand by the door while I walk the ceiling. Madame snorts, despite herself. You are your mother's child. She hands Adele a small cloth bag, chalk dust mixed with lemon ash. If the page starts breathing, teach it to cough. Night comes with the punctuality of someone who doesn't worry whether they are wanted. Adele lays the 2 pages side by side and studies the measures bar by bar, finding where the crimson version bends the line and the black holds firm. She marks the differences with pencil, building a spine out of stubbornness. When her eyes blur, she stands, opens the window, and lets the city's soft clamor comb her thoughts. She does not hear the footstep until it has finished being a footstep. The man from the apse stands inside her room, where no door opened, no hinge sang. He holds nothing. His presence is a chord. Others will come, he says. They prefer bargaining to terror, but the bargain is terror with an alibi. When they offer you your mother's voice on a page, ask who taught it to speak. You came to warn me. I came to listen, he says, and nods toward the music. Play what you wrote between the lines. Adele raises the violin. She plays not the crimson measure and not the black, but a third thing built from refusing to surrender all the way to either. It is less beautiful and more alive. It stumbles in the place where a perfect composer would have polished, and in the stumble there is a human body. When she finishes, the room is not safer, but it is truer. He closes his eyes. When he opens them, there is a shadow of someone else standing behind his face, a man who might once have been proud to be looked at by his mother in a pew. If you keep that center, he says, you may survive. And find you, she says. He tilts his head. You already found me, not your name, she says. Your guilt. Names are cheaper, he answers, and slips back into the part of the room that never quite agrees it is inside. Adele lowers the violin. The house settles as if it has been holding a breath. She adds another pencil mark to the staff. The line does not care that her hands shake. Lines rarely do. In a chapel built to hold the sick, Adele found the man who teaches music to consume and the confession that made him dangerous. She learned that a page can be copied into a key, and that survival may depend on playing the third thing, neither curse nor denial. The shadow did not leave, it simply learned her name. Thank you for watching this episode of Crimson Sonata on Veilbound Studios. The music has only just begun, and every note carries Adele deeper into the truth. Be sure to subscribe, share, and join us for the next episode, Episode 5, Elegy of the Fallen.